The wind-blown dust in Copper Creek never seemed to settle. It hung in the streets like a funeral veil, coating storefronts, miners' lungs, and every scrap of gossip passed across clotheslines. Before we kick off this adventure, don't forget to hit like on the video, and let us know in the comments where you're watching from. Clara Boone swept her porch for the third time that morning, her hands moving by habit, while her thoughts drifted inside the dark house. She folded Hank Doyle's worn shirts, each crease, stirring memories she longed to forget, the sharp smell of whiskey, the sting of his temper, the bruises she had hidden under high collars. Few neighbors came to the burial. Not many cared to honor a gambler who left debts instead of good memories. Clara stood at the grave in her only black dress as clods of earth thudded on the pine coffin. Behind her, Cyrus Flint cleared his throat. "Hank's debts don't vanish with him," he said. Clara had known this reckoning was coming. In Copper Creek, a dead man's obligations stuck like burrs. "I have nothing left," she replied quietly, eyes on the grave. "The house is mortgaged. His tools are gone. There's always something Cyrus said, a man unused to hearing no. Come to my place tomorrow. We'll talk terms." But morning brought no real discussion, only a verdict. In the Flint family parlor under elk heads, and the smell of tobacco and old leather, Cyrus sat like a land baron holding court. His sons Rex and Cole flanked him, eyes sharp as knives. $40, Cyrus declared. "With interest, you'll work it off." "I can take in washing, mending," Clara offered. Rex laughed, the sound brittle as breaking glass. "That's 2 years' labor. Then I'll work 2 years. "No." Cyrus's palm hit the desk with a crack. "I've got a better bargain. There's a man up the mountain land I want but can't buy. He needs a woman's hand around his place. 1 year with him clears your debt." His thin smile made her stomach knot. "You're selling me," Clara said, gripping the chair. "Settling a debt," Cyrus corrected coolly. "Unless you'd rather I haul this to Marshal Luke Rourke. Debtor's jail is no place for a woman." He and everyone in Copper Creek knew the marshal rarely crossed the Flints. Clara's voice stayed steady, though her heart pounded. "When now? No time for packing or farewells." Rex heaved her trunk, while Cyrus readied the wagon. As they rattled down Main Street, Clara kept her gaze forward, feeling the prying eyes behind curtains and doorways. The mountain road was more mud than trail. Cold October rain turned every climb into a fight. Clara sat stiff between Rex and Cole, her mother's wedding ring cutting into her palm where she clenched it. "They say he killed a man," Rex said, casually spitting tobacco. "That's why he hides up there." "Lets wolves sleep in his cabin," Cole added with a grin. "Hardly talks, just grunts like an animal." Clara stayed silent. Whatever waited ahead, she was no longer a person in their eyes, just freight to be delivered. Pines and aspen crowded close as the air sharpened with wood smoke and the wilder scent of sap and wet earth. A flicker of silver flashed through the trees. Rex's hand twitched toward his rifle. "Just the wolves watching," Cole muttered. Clara had heard the tales of wolves that moved like mist and obeyed a single man. Hank had scoffed, but Hank scoffed at every truth that didn't serve him. The cabin appeared suddenly as though carved from the rock itself. Massive timbers weathered to silver, perched on a ledge with forest on 3 sides and a sheer drop on the 4th. Smoke curled from the chimney, the only sign of life. Cyrus was already there, his horse tied to a post, speaking with a lone figure in the doorway. At first glance, Clara thought the rumors wrong. The man wasn't beast, but stone, broad-shouldered, built like the mountains behind him, clad in buckskin and wool gone threadbare. A thick beard shadowed his face, and his eyes, winter sky blue, were cool and remote. "This is the woman," Cyrus announced. "Good cook keeps a house. She'll do." The stranger, Wade Cross, though she would not know his name for days, looked her over as a rancher might size up a horse, his gaze moving from her pinned hair to her mud-stained boots. "1 year," Cyrus said. "She works for you. Her husband's debt is cleared. Fair trade." Wade's eyes flicked to Cyrus. Some unspoken history passed between them. Then he gave a slow, single nod. No handshake. No words. Just that silent agreement that signed away a year of Clara Boone's life. No words passed between them. No handshake. Just that single deliberate nod that sealed away a year of Clara Boone's freedom. Rex and Cole Flint dumped her trunk into the mud with a careless thud. Cyrus Flint swung into the saddle, his eyes cold with triumph. "Give Wade Cross any trouble," he warned, "and you'll find worse waiting when you come back. Mountain justice is one thing, but you still answer to me." Then they were gone. Wagon creaking down the steep trail, leaving Clara alone with her battered trunk and a heart full of dread. The silence that followed was absolute. No church bells, no town noise, only the restless whisper of pines, and somewhere close, the low whicker of a horse. Wade had already turned inside. Clara stood rooted, unsure whether to follow or stay. Out here, the rules of polite society meant nothing, and she felt unmoored without them. From the dark timberline, a great silver-white wolf stepped forward, eyes like molten gold fixed on her. Her breath caught. The creature studied her with unnerving intelligence, then padded past and nudged the cabin door open with its massive head. From within came a deep, rough grunt, acknowledgement, or command she couldn't tell. What choice remained? Clara gripped the rope handle of her trunk and dragged it toward the heavy log door. It swung shut behind her with a finality that made her chest tighten. Through the lone window she watched the day's last light sink behind the peaks, along with every remnant of the life she had known. Maybe she thought, as she crossed that dim threshold, some things had to die before others could begin. The cabin's interior was darker than expected. One room served every need: kitchen sitting space and sleeping corner anchored by a stone hearth that held the only real warmth. Shelves lined the walls, each tool and tin arranged with soldierly precision, everything worn smooth by years of hard use. The wolf shadow, she would later learn, curled near the fire like a giant hound, though nothing about its wary grace seemed tame. Wade Cross ladled stew from a pot and set a wooden bowl and spoon on the table. Without a word, he retreated to a chair near the fire, dismissing her as if silence were law here. The meal was thin, mostly broth, a few stray bits of meat and wild onion. Clara ate quietly, aware of him, the way one senses a storm on the horizon. When she finished, she washed the bowl in a bucket near the door and replaced it neatly on the shelf. Unsure what else to do, she stood in the middle of the room until his voice finally rumbled from disuse. "Your place." He pointed toward a corner where a straw mattress lay rolled with a single blanket. Not the bed, a small mercy she hadn't dared hope for. She set out her bedding, while Wade banked the fire and stepped outside. Through the thick log walls, she heard him moving, checking latches, tightening shutters, guarding against the night. Shadow remained by the hearth, those golden eyes following her every motion. When Wade returned, he went straight to his own bed without a glance. Clara lay on her pallet, fully dressed, the rough blanket pulled to her chin, staring up at the timbered ceiling. Outside, the wind moaned through the pines, and distant wolves called to one another, their cries answered by a soft whine from Shadow. Sleep never came. Every creak might be danger, every shifting shadow a threat. Hank Doyle had taught her that lesson, though his menace came from whiskey and cards, not wild mountains. At last, dawn bleached the window gray. Clara rose, folded her bedding, and set about making herself useful. The place was clean, but she sensed the mark of a long bachelor life order without comfort. She found flour, salt pork, a sack of tired beans, no eggs, no butter, no sugar. Still, she coaxed biscuits from the cranky old stove and had them ready when Wade emerged. He stopped short, surprise flickering across his rugged face before the stone mask settled back. Without a word, he ate 4 biscuits, then shrugged into his coat and paused at the door. "Don't go past the tree line. Don't touch the traps. Don't run." With that, he stepped out, shadow gliding after him like smoke. Left alone, Clara spent the day learning the cabin's rhythms. Water came from a rain barrel outside. A lean-to sheltered the woodpile. The root cellar yielded potatoes, turnips, carrots gone a bit soft. A slab of venison hung in the smokehouse. She sliced enough for supper. By mid-afternoon, curiosity drew her to the window. The sight stole her breath, ridges marching to a far horizon, valleys drowned in mist, eagles spiraling on invisible currents. For a heartbeat, she forgot she was here under duress. Then 3 wolves padded from the trees, circling the cabin with deliberate steps. They didn't hunt, only watched and then slipped back into the forest's hush. Wade returned at dusk with a rabbit swinging from his belt. He skinned and dressed it with scarred, capable hands that bore knife cuts and burns, but turned gentle as he checked Shadow's thick coat for burrs. They ate rabbit stew in silence. Clara had found a few wild herbs to brighten the flavor. Wade emptied 2 bowls without comment, which felt like progress. Days blurred into a rough routine. He left at first light, returned at dusk. She cooked, cleaned, mended what needed mending, and learned to read the tilt of his shoulders, the length of his stride. Some days he brought game. Some days only himself. On the 5th morning, she woke to find a bowl of warm water set beside her pallet. A small thing, yet he'd heated it, carried it, and placed it quietly enough not to wake her. She washed her face and hands, feeling human for the first time since Copper Creek. That evening, when Wade examined the neatly darned socks and patched shirt she had mended, he ran a thumb over the stitches and gave a single, thoughtful nod. Wade Cross studied the neat repairs, his rough thumb brushing each tight stitch, before he gave a single, almost reluctant nod, approval, maybe more. The first real snow came early, though October still clung to the calendar. Clara Boone woke to a hushed world dressed in white. Wade was gone, but the fire was banked high, and coffee warmed on the stove. She pulled a blanket tight and stepped onto the porch. Fresh tracks laced the yard, boot prints, wolf pads, deer trails. The mountains loomed closer, their edges knife-sharp, beautiful and fierce, all at once. "You're not running," a low voice said. She jumped. Wade stood at the cabin's corner with a deer slung over his shoulder, watching her. "Where would I go?" Clara pulled the blanket tighter. He studied her a beat longer, then passed by to hang the kill. She noticed a slight hitch in his stride. Inside, she had hot water ready cloths laid out. He eyed them, guarded. "Sit," she said, surprising herself with the authority in her tone. "That leg needs tending." For a long moment she thought he'd refuse. Then Wade lowered himself to the chair while she knelt, easing off his boot and rolling up his trouser leg. A deep gash scored his calf, angry, but not life-threatening. She cleaned the wound in silence, feeling the taut strength in him as he stayed stone still. When she tied the bandage, his hand caught her wrist. Not harsh, just enough to stop her. Why? One word carried every question. Why help him? Why care because it needs doing? She answered simply. He released her. She rose, and for an instant his ice-blue eyes held something she couldn't read. Then Shadow nosed through the door, scattering snow across the floor, and the moment dissolved. That night, Wade surprised her with 3 full sentences, plain talk of weather and game trails, yet his voice held a new warmth. The cabin still felt rugged and cold, but no longer entirely forbidding. The second week brought harsher weather and a visitor. Clara heard horses before she saw them. She snatched the rifle, but Wade emerged from the trees, lifting a hand to steady her. Zeke, he called recognition in that single word. Zeke Porter, lean as jerky and bearded like a backwoods prophet, rode in grinning wide. "Wade, you rascal, heard you've got a lady up here. Had to see for myself." He swung down and approached Clara with easy cheer. "Zeke Porter, ma'am, at your service." He pumped her hand with enthusiasm and tipped his hat all in one motion. "Prettier than Wade deserves, that's for sure. You must be the widow Boone. Folks in town are buzzing." Clara's stomach tightened. "What are they saying?" Zeke's grin softened. The usual talk. Pay it no mind. Wade's a good man, whatever else they chatter." They shared supper, Zeke spinning lively tales, news from Copper Creek gossip, from distant camps, and wild stories that even coaxed a half smile from Wade. Before leaving, Zeke slipped a small cloth bag into Clara's hand. "Sugar," he winked. "Can't court a lady proper without sugar for her coffee." When the door shut, Wade stared after him. "He means well," Clara offered. "He talks too much," Wade muttered. Yet next morning a spoonful of sugar sat beside the coffee pot. By the 3rd week, Clara awoke to find a wooden carving on the table, a mountain bluebird, wings half spread, each stroke of the knife careful and sure. "It's beautiful," she said when Wade returned. He only grunted, but she caught the pleased flicker in his eyes. That night he whittled another bird, while she mended clothes, the quiet rhythm of knife and needle blending with the crackle of the fire. Shadow dozed between them, and Clara felt something she hadn't known in years, peace. It was as fragile as thin ice, but it was real. For once, she let herself rest in it, knowing tomorrow would carry its own burdens. The calm didn't last. One November morning, she was hanging wash when the sky darkened and a sudden gale tore sheets from her hands like angry spirits. She fought to save what she could, fingers stiff with cold. Wade appeared wordless, helping her wrestle the rest inside. They stood dripping before the fire, a mound of damp laundry between them. Clara's teeth chattered as she wrung out a shirt. Wade glanced back. "Change first. Clothes can wait." She ducked behind the makeshift curtain, grateful for the small privacy. When she re-emerged, Wade had laid her wet things near the hearth and stepped outside to brace shutters and check the animals. The storm howled, bending trees like reeds, but he moved through it as if it were a summer breeze. That night, as wind roared and snow banked high against the walls, Clara noticed him guarding his left shoulder. He had chopped wood hard before the storm. "Let me see," she said. "It's nothing. Nothing doesn't make you hold your arm like that." They locked eyes across the fire-lit room. Shadow lifted his head, ears pricked. Finally, Wade exhaled and eased out of his shirt. Clara's breath caught. Scars traced his back like a brutal map, some old and silvered, others newer and raw, but the worst was a thick web of burns across his shoulders down his spine. "Shirt caught when I was reaching," he said gruffly. She found the pulled muscle and worked it gently steady as a heartbeat. He tensed, but didn't pull away. When was the last time anyone had touched him with such care? "There was a fire," he said suddenly, voice rough. Back in Kansas. 7 years ago. She kept her hands steady, asking nothing, waiting. Had a wife, a little girl, a small place, nothing fancy, but it was ours. Wade Cross spoke in a voice stripped of feeling, as if reciting someone else's tragedy. I was away driving cattle to market. When I came back, the muscle beneath Clara Boone's steady hands twitched hard. She worked the knot out, gently, patient. Folks said raiders. Maybe just someone nursing a grudge. Doesn't matter. I got there too late, pulled down burning beams, trying to... He stopped. Trying. Clara's throat burned. She thought of her own smaller but still cutting losses. I'm sorry. I don't want pity, Wade said low and tight. Not pity, understanding. He turned and caught her wrist again. This time his winter blue eyes were bare, unguarded. That's why I stay up here. Why I don't go to town. Don't want... He let her go. Just so you know what kind of man you're stuck with. A man who tried, Clara said softly. That's the kind you are. Something shifted in his face. He reached for his shirt and pulled it on with care. When he spoke again, his voice carried a new ease. Your turn. How'd you end up tied to a fool like Hank Doyle? Clara gave a wry smile. The usual way. He looked good, talked sweet. My father owed money. Hank offered to clear the debt if I married him. She lifted one shoulder. I was 17. What did I know? He hurt you. It wasn't a question. Clara looked aside. Better when he wasn't drinking. Worse when he was losing at cards. When both hit at once. She let the words trail off. Then I learned how to hide. Silence settled over the room, but it wasn't heavy. Outside, the blizzard sealed them inside their small world. Shadow padded over and laid his big head on Clara's knee. She stroked his fur, warmed by the quiet trust. He likes you, Wade said at last. Smart wolf. A quick flicker crossed his mouth, almost a smile. Clara caught it before it vanished. The next morning dawned bright and bitter. Wade left early and returned by noon, Zeke Porter riding behind him. The trapper's usual cheer had a grim edge. Got word from town, Zeke said, rubbing icy hands before the fire. Rex Flint's been spreading talk. Wade's jaw hardened. What kind of talk that you're holding Clara here against her will, saying she's being ill-used? Zeke shot Clara an apologetic glance. Sorry for the blunt words, ma'am, but you need to know. A chill slid through Clara, despite the roaring fire. That's not gossip for gossip's sake, Wade said flatly. Cyrus Flint wants this land. Figures if he stirs up enough trouble, he can get Marshal Luke Rourke involved. Already, as Zeke added. Rex has his ear, and probably his palm. They're fixing to ride up and check on the widow's welfare. Let them come, Wade growled. Now hold on, Zeke began. I said, let them come. Wade rose tall and unyielding. This is my land. She's here legal, working off a debt. If they want to twist that, let them try. Zeke left soon after, promising to listen for more news. Clara watched Wade pace tension rolling off him like heat from a forge. Maybe I should write a letter, she suggested. Tell them I'm fine, that you think they care what's true. He swung toward her, then stopped himself. Sorry. Not at you. I know. And she did. It startled her how quickly she could read him now. But we should be ready. Wade studied her respect in his eyes. What do you suggest? They spent the afternoon circling the property, Wade showing natural defenses, hidden approaches, and likely vantage points. Clara surprised herself with practical ideas if a posse came to drag her off. You've got a tactical mind, Wade said, as they stood on a rocky rise. I learned to stay 3 steps ahead. Necessary with Hank. He nodded slowly. We'll need more food, more ammunition. He hesitated. Zeke could take you over the pass, get you to the railroad. No. The word rang sharper than she meant. Wade waited. I mean, Clara drew a breath. What would I go back to? More debt, another forced marriage. At least here I know where I stand. Do you? His eyes searched hers. I'm starting to. That night, Wade taught her to load and clean the rifle. His big hands covered hers, guiding patiently when she fumbled. Shadow watched, ears pricked as if sensing the change. I've never shot a man, Clara admitted while sighting down the barrel. Hopefully you won't have to. Sometimes showing you're ready is enough. And if it's not... He was silent a long time. Then you do what needs doing. Same as always. 1 week passed, then 2. Zeke returned twice each visit, bringing uglier rumors. Claims of bruises on Clara, of screams in the night. None of them true. Cyrus is offering to take you back, Zeke reported. Calls it his Christian duty, seeing as he sent you here. Clara laughed, sharp and sudden. His Christian duty. That's rich. You want to go back? Wade asked quietly. You want me to? That's not what I asked. No, I don't want to go back. Something unspoken passed between them, marked by Zeke's knowing smile and Shadow's tilted head. After Zeke left, Wade handed Clara a bundle wrapped in oilcloth. In case you need it, he said gruffly. Inside lay a knife, the handle worn smooth with years of use, his carving knife. I can't. You can. You will. He closed her fingers over it. Things are going to get worse before they get better. I want you ready. Clara felt the weight of the blade and of his trust. Teach me. So he did how to grip it, how to move with it, until the knife felt like an extension of her own resolve. Clara Boone learned every move with the same grit she'd brought to every hard turn of her life, finding weak spots, testing strengths training, until the knife felt like part of her own hand. When Wade Cross corrected her grip when he stepped behind to guide her stance, she caught the clean scent of pine and wood smoke on him. His touch was precise, careful, his breath catching whenever she nailed a maneuver. You pick things up fast, he said, after she spun free of his mock attack. Good teacher, she answered, breathless from effort, and something more. They stood close in the fading light, Shadow watching from the doorway. For an instant, Clara thought he might bridge the space between them, but Wade stepped back, the quiet wall sliding up again. Best get supper on, he muttered. Yet that night while she cooked, he carved by the fire, and when she set his plate down, his fingers brushed hers on purpose. Hope was a dangerous seed on this mountain, but it had taken root all the same, stubborn as the herbs she'd coaxed to life in little pots by the window. Outside, winter pressed closer, and with it a sense of trouble gathering, not snow this time, but human greed and spite. Clara touched the knife at her belt, felt the solid presence of Wade across the room, and the watchful wolf at their feet. Let them come, she thought. We'll be ready. December's cold bit deep, but the news Zeke Porter carried chilled Clara even worse. He arrived at dawn, mule steaming, despite the icy air, his face hard beneath frost-rimmed whiskers. They're coming tomorrow, he said without preamble, gladly accepting the hot coffee she pressed into his hands. Rex Flint's been riling up the whole town, Zeke went on. Claims he's got it on good word you've been crying for help. He spat into the fire. His good word is pure fancy, but Marshal Luke Rourke's swallowing it whole. Wade stood at the window, eyes on the tree line. How many, the Marshal, both Flint boys, maybe a pair of deputies. Cyrus is staying cozy in town, keeping his hands clean. The snake, Zeke muttered. He turned to Clara. They're saying if you won't come willingly, they'll arrest Wade for unlawful imprisonment. But I'm here by agreement, Clara said sharply. Since when does the law bother men like that? Wade's tone was iron. This is about land. The rest is excuse. Something in Clara hardened. She'd spent a lifetime dodging fights, making herself small. No more. Then we make sure they don't get what they're after. Both men looked at her. Zeke. I need a favor, she said. Name it, ma'am. Ride back to Copper Creek. Find Ruth Deacon at the boarding house. Tell her Clara Boone needs her to remember the truth. Zeke frowned. What truth? The bruises I wore to town 3 months before Hank died. The split lip I had on Easter. The time she hid me in her root cellar while Hank raged drunk through the streets. She saw it all. Clara's voice stayed level, clinical. Ada Frost can back her up, though she'll take more convincing. Silence settled. Wade turned from the window, unreadable. You want me to gather witnesses? Zeke asked at last. I want you to remind them of what they already know, that anything done to me wasn't done on this mountain. Clara met Wade's eyes. And tell them I've been writing letters sealed. If harm comes to me, those letters will reach the territorial marshal. Zeke's grin flickered. Have you? Now I have now. Clara drew paper and ink from Wade's supplies. Give me an hour. While she wrote, Wade and Zeke worked outside, setting discreet markers to track any approach. Shadow paced restlessly, aware of the tension. When Zeke finally left, carrying her letters, Wade came back in trailing cold air and quiet purpose. That was smart, he said. The witnesses. I learned from Hank how to wield shame. Only difference is I'm using truth, not lies. Clara dripped wax to seal the last envelope. These are bound for Judge Owen Frost in Denver. Insurance. You think ahead. I'm tired of reacting. Time to act first. They spent the rest of the day readying for a siege, not only weapons and defenses, but signs of normal life. Clara hung curtains from spare fabric. A woman held captive doesn't hang curtains, she said, setting bright squares of color against the rough logs. Wade helped her rig the ropes, a faint hum under his breath. His look lingered on her. What she asked. You're not what I expected. And what was that? Someone broken, afraid, weak. I am afraid, she said, meeting his gaze. But broken things can be mended. Weakness is letting fear run your life. I'm done with that. That night they ate in steady silence. Shadow sprawled like a sentry between them. Wade carved a wolf, while Clara listed every resource Cyrus Flint might covet the spring. The timber rights, the southern pasture touching the mining road. Knowledge is ammunition too, she said. He laid down the carving knife. Clara. The way he said her name made her pause. Tomorrow might turn ugly. It won't. But if it does, there's a trail behind the smokehouse. Follow it up to the big pine with the lightning scar, then cut east. Zeke's cabin is 4 miles. He'll get you safe. I'm not running, she said firmly. Clara, no. She crossed the room until she stood before him. I've run enough for one lifetime. Clara Boone had spent her whole marriage running, dodging Hank Doyle's fists, his gambling debts, and the bitter truth of what her life had become. Now she knelt beside Wade Cross's chair and looked up at him with clear, steady eyes. I'm done running, Wade. This is where I make my stand. His rough palm came to rest against her cheek, startlingly gentle. Stubborn woman. Stubborn man. For a breath, the air between them hummed with possibility, until Shadow gave a low, uneasy whine, and the moment slid apart. Morning came too soon under a sky the color of lead and the heavy promise of snow. Clara dressed with care, her best wool dress hair pinned neat, her mother's cameo fastened at her throat armor of quiet respectability. Wade pulled on his seldom-worn town coat, looking awkward, but resolute. Remember, he said as they waited, "Let me speak first. But if they try to separate us, I know what to say." Clara touched the sealed letters hidden in her pocket, and the knife at her belt beneath the shawl. "We're ready." Shadow caught the sound before they did a low growl rising in his chest. Then came the muffled clatter of hooves and men's voices on the icy air. Clara's heart thudded, but her hands stayed steady. "Stay inside unless I call Wade," told her, moving to the door. "Wade," she called softly. He turned. "Whatever happens," she said, "I'm here because I choose to be, not because of any debt." Something fierce sparked in his eyes before he gave a single nod and stepped outside. Clara moved to the window. Marshal Luke Rourke led the party, his badge catching the gray light. Rex and Cole Flint flanked him, and 2 deputies she didn't know rode behind. They stopped at the invisible boundary Wade had marked as his property line. "Cross," the marshal called. "We're here on official business." "State it." Wade answered, his stance easy, but charged with readiness. "We've had reports of a woman held against her will. We need to see the widow Boone. Make sure she's... well." Rex Flint let out a short, mocking laugh. Clara's temper snapped. She opened the door and stepped onto the porch with deliberate calm. "I'm perfectly well, Marshal Rourke, as you can see." 5 pairs of eyes turned to her. She stood straight, every inch the respectable frontier wife. "Ma'am," the marshal said, tipping his hat, "we've heard troubling accounts. I'll need to speak with you privately just to be sure." "No." The single word cut through the cold like a rifle crack. Clara stepped forward, still on the porch, but nearer to Wade. "Anything you need to ask can be asked right here unless you have a warrant for something else." Rourke shifted in his saddle. "Now, ma'am, no need for warrants. We're only concerned enough to ride 5 hours up a mountain in December." Clara's shawl tightened around her shoulders, the picture of controlled indignation. "That's unusual. You tell them Ma'am Rex called. Tell them how he's been treating you. We know you're scared, but we're here now, Mr. Flint." Clara's voice sliced like cold steel. "The only thing that frightens me is the thought of returning to town, where men like you feel free to spread lies about a widow working off her husband's debts. Honestly." Lies. Rex flushed a dark red. "Everyone knows." "What everyone knows," Clara cut in, "is that my father arranged this year of work to clear Hank Doyle's debts. And everyone also knows, though they pretend not to, why I carried so many bruises during my marriage. Strange, isn't it, how those accidents ended the day Hank died?" Silence fell so deep, even the wind seemed to pause. Furthermore, Clara continued drawing letters from her pocket. "I've written Judge Owen Frost every week about my situation. If Wade Cross were mistreating me, don't you think I'd mention it, especially with the judge's wife being my second cousin?" It was a calculated bluff, delivered so firmly that Clara saw a flicker of doubt cross Rourke's face. "Ma'am," the marshal began, "if you'd simply come with us in December. With a storm on the way." Clara gestured to the dark sky. "You'd risk freezing me on the trail to feed Rex Flint's imagination." She let a tremor of hurt edge her voice. "Haven't I endured enough? First Hank Doyle, then being traded like stock, and now this. When does a woman earn peace?" The deputies exchanged uneasy glances. This wasn't the visit they'd expected. Wade moved forward slightly. "The lady's right about the weather. You'd best ride back before it breaks." "We're not leaving without her." Cole Flint snapped hands, sliding toward his gun. Shadow appeared from the trees, teeth bared in a silent snarl. Beyond him, more dim shapes flickered his pack, waiting. "Easy, boy," Wade said quietly. "Don't do something you'll regret." Marshal Rourke raised a steadying hand. "Nobody's drawing iron here." He looked squarely at Clara. "Ma'am, you're saying you're here of your own will, working off that debt? All legal, I'm saying." Clara replied clearly that I'm safer on this mountain than I ever was in Copper Creek. Draw your own conclusions. The marshal studied her for a long moment, then gave a short nod. We're leaving. What, Rex blurted. You can't just I said we're leaving. Rourke's tone brooked no argument. The lady says she's fine, and she looks fine. I've no reason to doubt her, certainly not on your word alone, Rex. Under a flurry of curses from the Flint brothers and stiff politeness from the deputies, the party turned back down the trail. Clara remained on the porch until they disappeared into the trees. Only then did her knees give way. Wade caught her before she fell, holding her close. You did good, he murmured. You did real good. She trembled in his arms as the adrenaline drained away. They'll be back, she whispered. Maybe so, but not today. Today you won. Wade Cross guided Clara Boone inside and eased her down by the fire. Shadow pressed warmly against her legs, a silent guard. That talk about Judge Owen Frost's wife, Wade, asked one brow lifting. Pure invention. Clara managed a damp smile. Delivered with conviction, though. Wade's laugh startled them both. Rough-edged, but real. Remind me never to play cards with you. I don't play cards, she replied, eyes glinting. I play to win. Outside, heavy snow began to fall, thick flakes already sealing the road. For now, they were safe. Clara knew, though, that this was only the first skirmish. The real fight for their home, their hard-won peace, still lay ahead. Yet as Wade pressed a steaming cup of tea into her hands and Shadow curled at their feet, she felt ready. She had found her voice, her strength, her place. Let them come, she thought. I'm done running. The attack struck 3 days later, in that gray hour before dawn, when the world seems to hold its breath. Clara woke to Shadow's warning growl and Wade's low whisper at her ear. They're here. Get dressed quick. She'd slept in her clothes since the marshal's visit, so in moments her boots were on, and shawl drawn tight. Outside came the faint creak of saddles, the muted murmur of men trying to be silent. How many, she breathed. 5, maybe 6. Wade answered, handing her the rifle. Remember what I showed you? Her hands stayed steady. As she checked the load, every sense sharpened to crystal clarity. Through the window, she caught movement among the trees. No badges this time, just trouble. The first shot shattered the glass, spraying the floor with icy shards. Clara ducked behind the heavy table Wade had tipped on its side days ago, already sighting along the barrel. Don't think, just breathe and squeeze. Her bullet struck Rex Flint in the shoulder as he charged the porch. He dropped with a cry, and chaos erupted, gunfire cracking from 3 sides, Shadow leaping through the doorway like silver lightning, Wade firing with cold precision from one window to the next. The roof, Clara shouted, spotting a figure scrambling up the back slope. Wade pivoted and fired through the rafters. A body thudded past the window lifeless before it hit the snow. Cole Flint lunged at the door boot, raised to kick it in. Clara's knife flashed first, sinking into his thigh. He stumbled back, cursing, and Shadow was on him in an instant, a blur of fangs and fury. Amid the gunfire, Clara heard more riders pounding up the trail, shouts ringing sharp against the frozen dawn. Reinforcements. Her heart tightened. But these men wore federal badges. Everyone stand down, the lead rider bellowed. Weapons on the ground now. The fight stilled. Rex writhed in the snow, clutching his bleeding shoulder. Cole struggled to fend off Shadow, torn and staggering. 2 other attackers lay face down, hands laced behind their heads. Marshal Grant Steele Wade said, lowering his rifle with deliberate care. About time. The federal marshal dismounted, steel-gray hair eyes that missed nothing. Got an interesting wire from Judge Owen Frost yesterday, he said. Something about a widow in danger and a crooked land grab. His gaze fixed on Clara. "Mrs. Boone, I presume." "Yes, sir," Clara replied, keeping the rifle in hand until she was sure. "No need for that now," Steele said evenly. "These men will be too busy explaining themselves to cause more trouble." He swept the scene with a hard glance. "Looks like I rode in just in time to witness an attempted kidnapping." "That right cross close enough?" Wade answered. "That's a lie," Rex groaned from the ground. "We came to rescue her." At dawn, armed to the teeth, with no legal authority, Steele's voice could have frozen a fire. "Save it for the judge, boy." The next hours blurred with statements and confiscated weapons. Medics in Steele's posse wrapped wounds and bound prisoners for the ride back. Clara learned that her earlier letters, the genuine ones she had sent with Zeke Porter, had reached Judge Frost, who immediately wired federal authorities about Marshal Luke Rourke's suspected corruption. "Been wanting to look into Rourke anyway," Steele told them as his men secured the captured Flint brothers. "This gave me the opening I needed." "What about Cyrus Flint?" Clara asked. "He gave the order. Can you prove it?" "Any of these men say so." Steele's grim face softened at her frustration. "I know, ma'am. But without proof, the best I can do is make sure these culprits face justice. Sometimes that has to be enough." When the marshals finally rode off with their prisoners, leaving a promise to return for formal depositions, Clara and Wade stood together in the wreckage of their cabin. Snow swirling through the shattered windows, and the smell of gunpowder still sharp in the air. Glass lay scattered across the floor, bullet holes scarred the walls, and dark stains marked the porch. But Clara Boone and Wade Cross were alive side by side. For the moment, the danger was over. "We'll need to clean," Clara said, though they both knew it was obvious. "We'll eat first, Aunt," replied, already checking that the stove still worked. "Then we'll fix what needs fixing." They moved through the cabin in a steady rhythm, sweeping shards of glass, nailing rough patches over holes, scrubbing away blood, while Shadow kept silent watch from his corner, worn out from the fight. By evening, the room almost looked untouched if you didn't study the quick repairs too closely. Clara stirred a pot of simple stew, seasoned with the quiet relief that they were still breathing. "You could have been killed today," Wade said at last. "So could you." "That's different." She turned from the stove. "Because I'm a woman. You think my life matters more because you matter to me." The words hung between them like a living thing. Clara set the spoon down with care. "Wade, I'm no good with words." He stood suddenly and paced to the window, fists tight. "But when I saw Rex pointing that gun at you, I thought—" He stopped, swallowed hard. "I can't lose someone else. I won't." Clara crossed to him and laid a gentle hand on his arm. "You didn't lose me. I'm right here." He turned toward her, and she saw everything he usually kept locked away: fear, hope, a deep yearning. "In a few months your debt's done," he said roughly. "You'll be free to go. What if I don't want to go?" The question cracked something open in him. He pulled her close, burying his face in her hair. "Don't say what you don't mean." "I never do," she whispered. "I told you before I stay because I choose it, unless you want me gone when the time comes." "Want." His laugh came out, strained. "I want you to stay. To wake and know you're here safe. To come in from the cold to your humming, your cooking, your stubborn arguments." His calloused hand cupped her cheek. "I want things I've no right to want." "Why no right? Because you deserve more than a scarred, half-wild rancher with more past than future. You deserve a proper life, not just survival." Clara thought of what proper had meant with Hank Doyle bruises hidden under church-going respectability, a cage disguised as marriage. Then she thought of this cabin, this man, and the wolf dozing at their fire. The choice was easy. "I've had proper," she said quietly. "I'll take real instead." He kissed her, then cautiously at first, as though she might break. When she leaned in, he drew her closer, and the kiss deepened into something unmistakable. A promise, a claim, a home. When they finally parted, breathless, Clara smiled. "Just my cooking that wins you over." "Huh? Hard-headed woman," Wade murmured, but he was smiling too, a rare boyish light that made him look years younger. "Someone has to keep you humble, too." They ate shoulder to shoulder while Shadow crunched a bone and the fire snapped and glowed. Outside, snow drifted down again, covering the day's violence with clean white. Tomorrow would bring fresh duties statements to give repairs to finish decisions about their future. But tonight, they had warmth and each other. As Clara cleared the dishes, she noticed Wade watching her with an unreadable look. "What is it?" she asked. "That smile," he said. "When you were at the stove humming, you smiled, and I thought—" He shook his head, almost shy. "Sounds foolish now. Tell me." He carved a thin curl from the scrap of wood in his hands, considering. "I came into this just wanting help. Someone to cook, make the days easier. Simple things. But that smile." Another curl fell. "It gave me something I didn't know I was starving for. Something sweeter than any bread you could bake." Emotion tightened Clara's throat. "Wade Cross, are you getting poetic on me?" "Maybe." His half-smile warmed his rugged face. "That a problem?" "No," she said softly. "No problem at all." Later, when the fire burned low and Shadow snored near the hearth, Wade reached into his pocket. "Been meaning to give you this." He opened his hand to reveal a simple silver ring worn smooth with age. Clara recognized it. He'd worn it on a chain beneath his shirt, though he'd tried to hide it. "It was my mother's," he said gruffly. "Not much to look at, but it's honest metal. Like us. Nothing fancy, just true clear through." Clara extended her hand and watched as he slid the ring onto her finger. It fit as if it had been waiting there all along. "Is this—" she began. "It's whatever you want it to be," Wade said. "A promise at the least that you have a place here as long as you want it. That I'll stand between you and anyone who means you harm. That," he cleared his throat, voice rough, "that you matter. To me." Clara looked down at the ring, her heart full. This plain silver band meant more than all of Hank Doyle's grand gestures ever had. "I love you too, Wade," Clara Boone said softly. His breath hitched. "I didn't say—" "You did," she interrupted gently. "Just not with those words." She kissed him a quiet seal on the truth between them. "I'm learning your language actions over words. Well," she added with a faint smile, lifting her hand so the firelight caught the ring. "This says plenty." They sat close as the fire sank to embers, speaking in low voices of the life ahead. Come spring, they would add a room to the cabin, maybe start a small herd and sell beef to the mining camps. Build something that was theirs, joined by choice, not by obligation. A garden, Clara suggested. Vegetables, herbs, maybe flowers, just for the pleasure of it. Could be young ones too, Wade said carefully. If we're blessed that way. Clara slipped her fingers through his. I'd like that a real family this time. One built on choosing, not owing. Shadow padded over and laid his great head on Clara's knee. She stroked his ears, smiling when Wade's calloused hand joined hers in the wolf's thick fur. This strange, wonderful family they were shaping wasn't the dream of her girlhood. It was better. Real. Honest. Theirs. Outside, snow kept falling, blessing and barrier both. By morning, the trail would vanish beneath drifts, locking them into their mountain haven. But Clara no longer felt trapped. She felt free to choose to stay, to love. She thought back to that first night standing alone in the mud, with her trunk heart hammering as the wagon rolled away. The frightened woman of that memory felt like someone she used to know long ago. Now, warm and safe, with Wade's arm around her and Shadow at their feet, she was someone new. No regrets, Wade asked quietly, as if he'd read her mind. Clara turned the ring and looked up at him with a sure smile. Not a one. And she meant it. Whatever came spring thaws or summer storms, fat years or lean, she would meet it here with this man in the home they had defended with blood and courage and truth. Maybe the mountain had first wanted her cooking. But her smile had given them both something far sweeter, a love worth fighting for, a life worth living, a home worth keeping. It was enough, more than enough. It was everything. News from town arrived with the spring thaw. Zeke Porter brought it along with supplies and a grin as wide as the valley. "You won't believe this," he said, barely swinging down from his mule before spilling the tale. Cyrus Flint's lost everything. Judge Owen Frost seized his holdings for bribing Marshal Luke Rourke. Rourke himself drew 3 years of hard labor. Rex faces 5 for attempted kidnapping. Cole got 3. Clara poured coffee while Wade stacked the flour sacks. The cabin looked different now. Curtains at the windows, herbs thriving in pots. A new room half-framed against the southern wall. Proof of a life built, not just endured. "What about Cyrus?" Clara asked. Zeke's grin dimmed. Slippery as ever. Claims he knew nothing of his son's plan. Threw them to the wolves to save his own skin. But he's ruined just the same, sold off most of his land to pay the fines. "Good riddance," Wade muttered. "There's more," Zeke said, watching Clara carefully. "Folks in Copper Creek are talking different now about you. Ruth Deacon's been telling everyone how brave you were standing up to Hank back when he lived, then staring down those Flint boys. Even Ada Frost has spoken out about things folks should have noticed long ago." Something eased inside Clara. Not forgiveness exactly, but recognition. Truth finally spoken aloud. "I don't suppose it matters much," she said quietly. "I'm not going back. No." Zeke agreed, noting Wade's hand resting easy on her shoulder and the silver ring on her finger. "Well, I'll be. When's the wedding?" "As soon as a preacher can get up here," Wade said. "Maybe next month if the trails hold." Zeke whooped, slapping his knee. "About time. I was starting to think you two were turning too wild for church vows." The afternoon passed in good talk and shared plans. Zeke delivered fabric Clara had ordered seed packets for the spring garden, and a letter from Judge Frost confirming that every charge against the Flints had stuck. As the sun lowered, he made ready to leave. "Almost forgot," he said, pulling a small parcel from his saddlebag. "This came for you, Clara. From Kansas." Clara's blood chilled. She knew no one in Kansas except... She opened the package carefully. Inside was a daguerreotype in a copper frame, a solemn woman and a young girl, their expressions fixed by the long exposure. The woman's features so resembled Wade's that Clara knew at once who they were. "Your wife. Your daughter," she whispered. The note inside was brief. "Found this in what's left of the old place. Thought you should have it. Welcome to the family. Signed E. Hargrove. My sister Rose Maddox Wade," said gruffly, reading over her shoulder. "I wrote her about you. Didn't think she'd..." Clara pressed the photograph into his hands. "They're beautiful. Marie and little Nora. She'd be 12 now if..." Wade's voice faltered as he traced a finger along the child's face. "I thought all the pictures burned." "Now you have this one," Clara said gently. "We'll put it on the mantel. They should be remembered here. He pulled her close, face buried in her hair. Behind them, Zeke cleared his throat and mumbled something about checking his mule's hooves, giving them a quiet moment. That night, Wade told her more about the life he'd lived before she found her way to his mountain door. The small Kansas homestead. Wade Cross's first dream of prosperity had ended in ash and blackened beams. He told the story slowly. Clara Boone's fingers laced through his shadow, pressed close, as if he too felt the weight of the memory. I went near crazy after Wade admitted. Tracked the men who did it for months when I found them. He paused, eyes fixed on the fire. Let's just say justice was served one way or another. But it didn't bring my wife and little girl back. Nothing could. So I came here, he went on quietly. Figured I'd finish out my days alone. Safer that way. And now Clara asked. Now I've got something to lose again. His arms tightened around her. Scares me how much. But you're not running, she said. Neither are you. No. Clara agreed. Neither of us is running anymore. A week later brought unexpected company. Clara was bent over the mountain garden they'd coaxed from stone and soil when she heard horses, steady, unhurried. Her hand went to the knife at her belt, then eased when she recognized the tall rider in front. Marshal Grant Steele swung down, tipping his hat. Mrs. Boone, Marshal Clara greeted as Wade stepped from the tree-line, rifle loose in his grasp. No trouble, Steele assured them, accepting the cool water Clara offered. Just tying up loose ends. Wanted to tell you the investigation's wrapped. The Flint brothers won't be bothering anyone for a long spell. And Cyrus? Clara asked. Interesting thing, Steele said. Seems Cyrus Flint decided California might be better for his health. Left last week, from what we hear. Ran, you mean, Wade said flatly. The marshal's grin was sharp. A man can relocate if he likes. Still, I sent word ahead to the California marshals, just in case he tries his old tricks in new country. They talked a while longer. Steele admiring the improvements rich soil turned for planting a half-framed addition to the cabin. Before leaving, he said, You did a brave thing, Mrs. Boone. Standing up, fighting back. Takes courage to face men like that. Takes desperation. Clara corrected a wry smile on her lips. And good aim. Steele chuckled. That too. You folks take care. Good to see something strong and decent come from all that ugliness. When he rode off, Clara and Wade stood looking over their land. The southern pasture already shimmered with new grass perfect for the small herd they planned to start. By summer, the cabin's expansion would be done room for the family they hoped to raise. Any regrets, Wade asked, as he often did. Never, Clara replied, as she always did. Then she hesitated. I've been thinking about names. For children, if we're blessed. I'd like to use Marie for a girl, or Nora, if you wouldn't mind. Wade stayed silent so long she feared she'd said too much. Then he turned her to face him, eyes bright with unshed tears. You do that. They're part of my story, part of what made me who I am. I'd never erase them. She touched his cheek tenderly. Maybe we can honor them while building something new. He kissed her hard and grateful. How'd I get so lucky? It wasn't luck, she said. It was choice yours and mine. Next morning, another surprise climbed the trail. Clara was feeding the chickens 6 hens and a cranky rooster when she spotted 3 women making their way up. Her heart tightened. Ruth Deacon led the small group with Ada Frost and Lila Carver beside her. Wade, she called softly. He stepped from the barn, reading the scene with one glance. I'll stay close, he said, disappearing around the corner. Clara knew he'd remain within earshot, ready. The women arrived flushed from the climb. Ruth spoke first, breathless but firm. Clara, we've come to apologize. Clara blinked, startled. "We failed you," Ada admitted. "All those years we saw but didn't act, whispered but didn't help. That wasn't Christian. It wasn't right. We want to make amends, if you'll let us," Lila added softly. Clara studied them women who had known her suffering and stayed silent. Anger rose, then slowly ebbed. "If you want to make it right," she said at last, "promise me this next time you see a woman in trouble. Don't just whisper. Act, speak up, help." "We will," Ruth vowed. "We've already formed a ladies' aid society for women in hard situations." "Good," Clara said simply. "Then we understand each other." The visitors stayed only briefly, leaving jars of preserves, bright fabric, and a Bible with Clara's name in gold peace offerings of a sort. She accepted them with a steady heart. "Well handled," Wade said as he reappeared. "Was it I wanted to rage, to tell them every cost of their silence. But you didn't." "No, because that would have chained me to the past, and I'm set on living in the present." That Sunday, they climbed the small hill to the quiet cemetery, not for grief, but for remembrance. Wade laid wildflowers on a stone marker Clara hadn't known was there, Marie and Nora Cross beloved always. "I come here sometimes," he said softly, "to tell them things. I think they'd have liked you." "I hope so." They stood together while the spring breeze carried the scent of pine and new growth shadow sniffing gently among the graves as if paying his own respects. On the walk back, Clara said, "I've been thinking about that new room we're adding. What if part of it became a schoolroom? Not for town children, it's too far, but for the trappers' families scattered through these mountains. Their youngsters need learning. You want to teach," Wade asked. "I want to be useful. And maybe—" She hesitated. "Maybe it's a way to get ready for our own children. A kind of practice." "I like it," he decided. "We'll add extra windows. Kids need light to learn." Hand in hand, they returned to the cabin, planning the details. The preacher was due next week for their wedding, a simple gathering with Zeke Porter and a few mountain families as witnesses. Nothing fancy, only true. That night, as the firelight played over their quiet home, Wade whittled a piece of cedar while Clara mended a shirt, and Shadow dreamed wolf dreams at their feet. Clara Boone thought about the long trail behind them from that first night of wary quiet, to this easy companionship from a cold bargain to a life freely chosen, from merely surviving to fully living. "What's got you smiling like that?" Wade Cross asked, without looking up from the cedar he was whittling. "Just thinking how the mountain only wanted my cooking," she teased. "But somehow we both got more than we bargained for." Regrets. His eyes lifted already, knowing the answer. "Never," Clara said, and meant it. "Not in this world." The fire popped softly. Shadow sighed in his sleep. Spring winds hummed their promise through the log walls of the growing home. Tomorrow would bring new labors and fresh blessings, but tonight they simply belonged to each other and to the quiet they had built. Summer came like a promise kept. Clara stood in her garden with her hands deep in black earth, watching bean vines stretch toward the mountain sun. The expanded cabin threw a cool shade across neat rows of potatoes, carrots, turnips, tomatoes, and squash. A year ago, she'd been scrubbing strangers' laundry for pennies to stretch Hank Doyle's whiskey money. Now she wondered if they'd planted too much. "What'll we do with it all?" she asked as Wade strolled from the porch he'd finished just last week. "Can it dry it, trade it?" he said, drawing her against him despite the dirt on her palms. "Zeke Porter says the mining camps will pay well for fresh goods." Money felt like a faraway concern. They already had what mattered: food, a snug house, one another. The small herd of cattle was thriving. The chickens laid more eggs than they could eat, and the iron wedding ring Wade had forged with his own hands meant more than gold ever could. Their wedding had been everything they hoped for. Pastor Levi Grant climbed the trail on a clear June morning and spoke the vows with the mountains as witness. Zeke wept openly. 3 trapper families brought their best dishes for the feast. Shadow watched it all with steady dignity. No white dress, no church bells, just vows spoken and kept. "Company coming," Wade said now, tilting his head. He had taught Clara to read the forest's signals, the sudden change in birdsong, the way Shadow's ears pivoted long before a stranger came into sight. It proved true. Belle Rowan appeared with her brood, the nearest neighbors from 4 miles down. The youngest toddled along in a determined wobble. Clara Wade. Belle called brightly. "Hope we're not intruding." "Never," Clara said, already heading for the door. "I'll put coffee on." These visits had become a summer rhythm as neighbors found their way to the Cross homestead, drawn by friendship and by Clara's growing reputation for lending a capable hand. She had helped Belle deliver her last baby when the midwife couldn't arrive in time, taught the Pike boys their letters when their father was laid up with a broken leg, and doctored cuts and fevers with herbs she grew herself. "Actually, we came to help," Belle said, hefting a basket. "Heard you were putting up preserves today." The simple offer tightened Clara's throat. Help, a small word but full of acceptance of belonging. I'd be grateful for the company. All afternoon they worked side by side, 5 women, when the Briggs family joined in turning berries, cucumbers, and green beans into shining jars of winter stores. Children tumbled through the yard under Wade's quiet watch, squealing when Shadow permitted them to stroke his thick silver coat. "I've never seen a wolf so gentle," Mrs. Briggs marveled. "He's particular about who he trusts." Clara replied, her eyes twinkling. "Just like someone else I know." The cabin filled with laughter and the cheerful clatter of jars. They gossiped about whose cow had birthed twins, who might be courting whom, and whether the railroad would truly cut through the valley. Ordinary talk, but precious to Clara, proof that the life she and Wade were making had deep roots. As evening fell, the families gathered their children and preserves payment for their help. At the door, Belle paused and said softly, "I'm glad you stayed, both of you. These mountains need families like yours." When the visitors were gone, Clara and Wade settled on the porch to watch shadows stretch over their land. The garden spread lush and green. Cattle grazed on the far pasture. Smoke rose in a straight blue ribbon toward the stars. Happy Wade asked. "Content?" Clara corrected. "Happy's too small a word." He understood. Happy belonged to moments, a good meal, a sunny day. Contentment settled deep in the bones. "I've been thinking about winter," Wade said after a pause. "Those neighbor kids, Rowans, Briggs, none can afford schooling in town, and it's too far anyway." "The schoolroom's almost ready," Clara offered. "I've got primers ordered, slates and chalk. We could start lessons in October after harvest." He repeated with a half smile. "You'll teach letters. I'll teach tracking, hunting, reading the woods, the things that keep a family alive up here." "You taught me," Clara said, threading her fingers through his. "How to shoot, how to read the weather, how to choose courage over fear. You taught yourself that," he said quietly. "Maybe, but you showed me it was possible." Stars pricked the indigo sky as they sat together, shadow settling at their feet. Night sounds rose, the hoot of an owl, the soft rustle of small creatures, the distant call of Shadow's wild kin. Once those noises had unsettled Clara. Now they were a kind of mountain lullaby. "I need to tell you something," she said at last. Wade's shoulders tensed. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong." She took his hand and placed it on her still flat belly. "Everything's right. But come spring, we'll need another room." Silence stretched deep and full of meaning. Clara Boone felt Wade Cross drop to his knees, his cheek pressed reverently to her middle. "You're sure?" His voice was raw. "As sure as a woman can be this early," she whispered. "But yes." She realized he was crying, this strong, unshakable man who had faced armed riders without a flicker of fear, now undone by a life no bigger than a seed. "Hey," she said softly, cupping his head. "These are good tears." "The best," Wade answered hoarsely. "I just never thought I'd have this again, a family, a future." "Well, you do," Clara murmured. "We do." He rose then, drawing her up with him. "Think we're ready?" "No," she said with a tremulous laugh. "Neither do I," he admitted. "But we'll learn like we do everything else together." Morning brought its share of chores, as mornings always did. One cow had snagged itself in a tangle of wire, a fox had tested the chicken coop, and the rain barrel had sprung a leak. They tackled each task side by side, Clara holding boards as Wade hammered Wade lifting, as Clara guided proof of the partnership they'd built. "We'll need supplies," Wade said, surveying their repairs. "I'll head to town tomorrow." "I'll come," Clara replied. He hesitated. She hadn't set foot in Copper Creek since that awful day nearly a year ago. "You don't have to," he said gently. "I know. But I think it's time. We can't hide up here forever." "This isn't hiding," he countered. "It's living." "Yes," Clara agreed. "But living means facing the past when it calls, and we do need supplies." Town looked the same dusty Main Street, the same weathered storefronts, the same folks going about their business. What had changed was Clara. She walked Main Street with her head high, Wade steady at her side, and Shadow pacing like a silver sentinel, drawing curious stares. Inside, Silas Hart's general store, conversations faltered. Clara ignored them, heading straight for the bolts of fabric. 10 yards of cotton, 5 of flannel, and whatever seed you've got left for fall planting, she said, her voice cool and businesslike. "Mrs. Boone. I mean, Mrs. Cross." Silas stumbled over her name. "Good to see you." They conducted their transaction briskly. Clara felt the weight of every watching eye and let them see her healthy ring on her finger color in her cheeks, the steady man at her side. Outside, as Wade loaded their wagon, a stranger approached a younger man with open, steady eyes. "Mrs. Cross." "Mr. Cross," he said, touching his hat. "I'm Marshal Jed Carver, the new law here. Wanted to introduce myself and let you know my door's open if you ever need anything." "Appreciate that," Wade said evenly. "I've heard about what happened with the Flints," Carver went on. "Won't happen again, not while I wear this badge. The law's meant to protect folks, not hound them." Clara found herself believing him. "Thank you, Marshal. That means a lot." On the ride home, wagon heaped with flower seed and quiet possibilities, Clara reflected on the deeper journey she'd taken, from a woman who hid and endured to one who chose and built. "You did good," Wade said, reading her thoughts, as always. "We did good," she corrected. "I couldn't have faced that alone." "You could have," he said with quiet certainty. "You're stronger than you know. But I'm glad you don't have to anymore." That evening, while Clara sorted their purchases, she found a small card tucked among the fabric. "Congratulations on your marriage. May you find every happiness. The Ladies' Aid Society of Copper Creek." "Look," she said, showing Wade. "They knew we were coming, left this for us. Seems you've got allies in unexpected places," he said, smiling faintly. "Seems we do," she echoed, noting how naturally he said, "we." At dusk, Zeke Porter arrived with fresh venison and a grin. "Heard you braved town today," he said, gladly accepting coffee. "Word is you handled it with grace. Marshal Carver's been asking about you two in a good way. Wants to know if you'd consider being unofficial deputies for this stretch. Keep watch report, Trouble. Wade snorted. Deputies, huh? Why not? You're already doing the work, ran off those claim jumpers last month, found the Pike boy when he wandered off. Might as well make it official. They waited under a sky pricked with stars. A badge would bring recognition and responsibility both, but they were already the mountain's quiet guardians. I'll think on it, Wade said at last. After Zeke left, night settled soft around their cabin. Clara brushed her long hair while Wade banked the fire and checked the doors. Shadow circled 3 times before curling at their feet. In the dark, they found each other with the tenderness of lovers and the steadiness of husband and wife, creating a private world inside their arms. I love our life, Clara whispered against Wade's chest. Even the hard parts. Especially the hard parts, he answered. They make the good sweeter. She laughed softly. Must be the mountain man in you getting philosophical. They lay listening as a lone wolf called across the ridges, and another answered a wild duet that no longer meant loneliness to Clara, but kinship voices reaching through the dark with promises of reunion. Boy or girl? Wade asked suddenly. What she said startled. The baby. What do you think Clara considered? Girl. Strong-willed and wild-hearted. God help us, he said, half laughing. He already has, she replied, and meant it. Spring came early, and gentle, bringing with it Nora Cross, a bright-eyed daughter born as the snow melted and wildflowers pierced the thawing earth. She arrived with her mother's quiet resolve and her father's steadfast calm, a living promise of the life Clara and Wade had fought so hard to build. Clara Boone's cry carried through the cabin, and Shadow answered with a long, proud howl from the porch. She's perfect, Wade Cross, whispered his rough voice breaking as he cradled their daughter hands that had once known only hard work and danger, now gentle as sunrise. Look at her, Clara. She's perfect. Clara, exhausted but glowing, watched the man she loved hold their child. A circle completed from ashes of grief to this fragile new life, bright with promise. Belle Rowan, who had midwifed the birth, busied herself with quiet efficiency, leaving the small family in their private wonder. She has your eyes, Clara said softly. And your stubborn chin? Wade countered, brushing a calloused finger across the baby's cheek. God help us when she's older. The cabin itself bore witness to change. All winter their little schoolroom had filled with eager young voices, 8 children trekking through drifts, to learn their letters and numbers from Clara, then following Wade into the woods to read animal tracks and clouds. The families paid in eggs, smoked meat, and stacked firewood, a barter economy as steady as the seasons. Now, with spring and baby Nora's arrival, their home pulsed with new life. Women from every nearby homestead had already climbed the trail to bring blankets and advice. Men lent a hand enlarging the garden, knowing Clara would have her arms full. Even Marshal Jed Carver rode up with congratulations and a shiny deputy badge. Never figured I'd wear one of these, Wade admitted that evening, turning the star in the lamplight. It suits you, Clara said, nursing Nora by the hearth. Protector. Guardian. That's who you've always been first for us now, for the whole mountain. He studied the badge a long moment, then nodded. Feels right. We've been blessed. Best to share that blessing. Shadow patted over, nose quivering. Nora's tiny fingers clutched his silver fur with surprising strength. The big wolf stilled, solemnly accepting the newest member of his pack. Summer ripened their hard work. The garden overflowed, the small herd of cattle grew strong, and Nora filled out with the steady strength of a mountain-born child. Clara often worked with her daughter, nestled against her chest, tending beans and squash, while Nora slept to the rhythm of her heartbeat. One golden July morning, as Clara hung laundry to dry, she spotted two riders approaching, not hurried, but deliberate. She knew now how to read the forest's language. Today, the air sang peace. Still, she called to Wade, who was shaping logs for a new smokehouse. The visitors, a neatly dressed man and woman, dismounted awkwardly city folk by their polished boots and ink-stained fingers. "We're looking for Mrs. Clara Cross," the woman said. She was perhaps 40, with intelligent eyes, alive with curiosity. "I'm Clara Cross," Clara replied. "Wonderful. I'm June Hollis of the Rocky Mountain Tribune, and this is my photographer, Frank Deacon. We've heard about your mountain school and the way you've built a community here. We'd love to share your story." Clara blinked. "Share? Our story?" "Yes," June said eagerly. "Readers need to know that courage and progress don't just live in towns. Ordinary people building something extraordinary, that's what inspires." By then, Wade had joined them. Nora perched solemnly on his hip. "We're just living our lives," he said, steady and cautious. "Nothing remarkable in that." "But that's exactly what makes it remarkable," June insisted. "Standing together, turning wilderness into home, that's a tale worth telling. If you write it," Clara said at last, "tell the truth. Don't polish us into heroes or make the mountain seem easy. Life here is hard, but it's honest, and we help each other stand tall. That's exactly the story I want to tell," June promised. For 2 days, the visitors stayed walking the land, watching Clara guide children through their letters and numbers, while Wade taught them to follow a trail or read a storm sky. Frank Deacon captured moments on glass plates, Clara in the garden with baby Nora Wade, mending harness shadow, silhouetted against a glowing ridge. Their final evening, as they shared a simple meal, June asked gently, "How did you two find each other and turn such a hard beginning into this?" Clara chose her words with care. "We chose each other. At first, we were just surviving. Somewhere between the first snow and the spring thaw, survival became living, and living turned into choosing." Wade allowed a rare smile. "The mountain only wanted her cooking, but her smile gave me something sweeter than any bread." June scribbled the words with delight. "Beautiful. May I quote you?" "If you must," Wade said gruffly, though Clara saw the quiet pride behind his eyes. When the journalist and photographer finally rode off, life returned to its steady rhythm. Months later, the published story brought letters from women seeking courage, from churches eager to help the school, and even from a publisher hoping to print Clara's memoir. "Never thought I'd be famous," Clara said one crisp morning as she read the latest letter while little Nora played at her feet. "You're not," Wade replied with a teasing grin. "You're just yourself. That's what they're drawn to, someone living truth out loud." By the time early snow dusted the peaks, they were well-stocked and well-loved. And when winter settled hard over the mountains, Clara and Wade faced it, as they faced everything together, their hearts and their home, ready for whatever the next season might bring. The root cellar brimmed with jars of bright preserves, the smokehouse heavy with hams and venison, and firewood stacked clear to the eaves, a fortress of plenty against the coming cold. Little Nora Cross took her first wobbly steps as November snow glittered around the cabin. She tottered from Clara Boone to Wade Cross with a triumphant squeal, while Shadow padded beside her, sharp-eyed and proud. "She's going to be as wild as these peaks," Zeke Porter said on one of his visits, chuckling, as Nora chased squawking hens with fearless determination. Good Clara and Wade answered together, then laughed at how naturally their voices matched. Their schoolroom kept growing. 2 families from the lower valley had moved closer, drawn by the promise of learning and fellowship. Wade built extra benches while Clara ordered more books paid for by the modest income from her published essays, practical writings on preserving food, teaching letters, and weaving trust among wary mountain settlers. By spring, the garden stretched wide and lush, feeding not only their household, but neighbors as well. Clara watched with quiet joy as Wade showed their daughter how to plant seed with a careful hand. "Like this," Papa Nora asked, her voice as clear as creek water. Just like that, Wade said, his big hands gentle as he guided hers. "Seeds are like folks, they need the right place to grow." Clara smiled at the unplanned poetry of it. Her rugged frontiersman had become philosopher and father protector and patient teacher. The deputy badge he wore to town spoke of public respect, but it was this teaching their little girl to coax life from soil that revealed the man he had become. "Mama, look!" Nora came running with dirt-smudged fists, a seed clutched tight. "I plant for you, thank you, sweetheart," Clara said, kneeling beside her. "Let's plant it together." 3 sets of hands pressed that tiny promise into rich earth Wade's, scarred and strong. Clara's capable and sure. Nora's small and full of wonder, while Shadow kept faithful watch, and an eagle wheeled high overhead. That evening they rested on their broad new porch, a gift of Wade's own carpentry, with rocking chairs Zeke had fashioned, and a small table for evening tea. Clara's thoughts wandered back over their long trail from the fear-choked wagon ride that first brought her here to this moment of deep contentment. From mere survival to an abundant life, from a bargain struck to a love freely chosen. "What's got you smiling like that?" Wade asked, reaching for her hand. "Circles," she said. "How life comes full circle, lost to love, winter to spring, hardship to harvest." She squeezed his calloused fingers. "How sometimes the worst paths lead straight to the best places. Philosopher again." He teased, eyes soft. "Must be the mountain air," she replied, watching Nora herd the wooden animals Wade had carved. "Or maybe it's just seeing what matters with clear eyes." "And what matters?" he asked. "This," Clara said, sweeping her gaze over the cabin garden, child, man, wolf, and endless sky. "Us. The life we build, the neighbors who share it, and the future we're shaping one day at a time. No regrets." His familiar question held only gentle curiosity now. Not one, she answered, as certain as the stars that began to bloom over the peaks. Nora climbed sleepily into Wade's lap. Shadow stretched out a warm guard at their feet. Indoors, a hearty soup simmered, while the hearth fire waited. Tomorrow would bring its share of weather-wild animals and neighbors needing help, but tonight the mountain lay quiet around a family made strong by choice and trust. The mountain might once have wanted only Clara's cooking, but what it had given them was richer love that transformed a home, that welcomed all seasons, and a future bright with hope. Clara lifted her eyes to the first silver stars, whispered a prayer of thanks, and followed her loved ones inside. Shadow lingered a moment, amber eyes scanning the forest before stepping in after them. Even a wild heart knows when it has found its forever place. The door closed softly, lamplight spilling across the snow like a golden promise in the mountain night. Thank you for journeying with Clara Wade, Nora, and Shadow. If this story has touched your heart, I invite you to stay with us to discover more true tales of the Wild West. Stories that honor resilience, tenderness, and the spirit that God placed in those who blazed the trail. Subscribe, share, leave your thoughts in the comments, and join us once again to journey across this untamed land. Thank you.